All right, the final rule of engagement, at least for now. I may come up with another one, but at least in version 1 of my rules of engagement, the final rule number 6, although it could be 7 or 8 by now, I don't know. Document it. Document your interactions. So I spoke to this in several of the preparation videos and some of the other rules videos. So here it is, the official documented video you've been waiting for, okay? So what does it mean? Well, it means to document it. Absolutely. Get a record of the conversation. Avoid text messages, emails. Family Wizard is a good one for messaging. It's what I use. The problem with Family Wizard is the same problem with emails and texts. So from a legal standpoint, emails and texts are virtually inadmissible because they're pretty much considered hearsay. It's not expert testimony. Any family court judge who's been at it longer than 3 days is sick and tired of trying to comb through emails where you're pulling each other's heads off. They do not care. They don't care because it's like, oh, hey, we're in divorce court. You mean to tell me these people don't agree? Who knew? Right? And they're not going to read it. Even in the case where they're forced to read it, they're not gonna enjoy reading it because your conflict is like waterboarding them with words, okay? They're gonna hate reading it. The only time it's really relevant, or that the only time that they're actually really going to read it with intent is when there's a physical threat against you or a physical threat against the child, or if a threat has been carried out and it's like evident and in the realm of criminal, right? That's where it really matters. And they're really only going to look at just that part. They're not going to sit there and get to know you as a person and learn about your long history of difficulty with this narcissistic borderline person. They don't care because they've seen it. Ain't nothing new. They know. Just show me the important parts. So avoid digital engagements, text-based engagements. Go for audio and video documentation and a journal. You can download apps, and now this is where it gets into dicey legal territory, because what I'm about to recommend, you really, really need the advice of an attorney or law enforcement professional before you do this. So there's my preface. You want to audio record, video record your interactions. That includes phone calls or interactions that occur in person, in various places, etc. Make sure you're not violating privacy laws or wiretapping laws. There are some states which is called a two-party consent state. New Jersey is one of these. That's one reason why so many telemarketing calls and collection calls and customer service calls, that's why so many calls come from New Jersey. New Jersey is a two-party state. They have to have your consent to record. And so they say this call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance purposes. Which, by the way, if you ever get one of those, you can turn around and inform them, okay, for the record, I am also recording this phone call. Do you consent to be recorded over here? And you watch, because it's gonna throw them off guard, and they're gonna say, you know what, I'm not actually sure how to respond to that. I say, well, okay, if you don't consent to being recorded, and if you don't know if you're allowed to be recorded, then I'm not gonna answer anything. So I don't know who you're trying to reach, but I'm not going to discuss any of that or tell you who I am unless you consent to being recorded. But I digress. Most states are a one-party consent state. And that means if you are having a conversation, you have the right to record your own conversation with somebody, and you don't have to tell them you're recording because you're a part of it. You cannot record people, and this is pretty much in every state, where it turns into wiretapping and felony privacy laws, is when you record people and you are not part of the conversation. So if you set your phone down with a voice recorder and you leave the room, you can't leave your phone in the room while you're not present. If you're recording a phone call, you cannot hand the phone to somebody else. You can put it on speakerphone, but you cannot hand the phone to somebody else. And so all of these laws break down at the federal level, the state level, and the local municipality level, and it even goes one step further based on area code. So if somebody is in California, or if somebody from New Jersey, if they have a New Jersey cell phone with a New Jersey area code, and they leave the state, they go to a different state where it's one party recording, but their phone number is a New Jersey number, you better make sure that you know and understand how the law breaks down on that. I sure as hell don't know how it breaks down, but it varies by state. But this is by far the most effective form of documentation, and it is absolutely worth doing the research and looking into it to make sure you get it right. Make sure you get it right, because then when it comes, the day it ever comes down to being in court, when it comes to being in court or in counseling or in therapy or with an attorney or with anybody else involved with stakes in the conflict, a recording captures all of the emotion, it captures all of the behavior, and it forces them to listen, it forces them to pay attention, and it forces them to get it right. If all you give them is screenshots of text messages and emails back and forth, they don't like to read it. They're just gonna read the first few sentences, skim, get the basic gist of it, and it just looks like a back and forth conflict. Okay? And they're not gonna read it because they don't know you. They cannot read your words, and they don't know you well enough to read your words with your genuine emotions. When other people read texts and messages between two people, they pretty much have to read it and project tone from their own life experiences. They have to project their own experiences into what they are reading. And they may not always get it right. You know, if you're begging and pleading in an email and they're reading it, but they're the kind where they say all men are evil or all women are evil. You know, if they're a He-Man woman hater and a woman's begging and pleading, he may very well read it as being controlling and histrionic and overly dramatic, right? So having the audio and the video is imperative. The other thing to look into, and as I said, check with an attorney, check with legal professionals before you go do this. See about the right to record people in public, because there are, in some states, if you're in public, you do not have a reasonable expectation to privacy. You can see this in, like the Covington kids deal recently, where it's the teenagers in MAGA hats in Covington, was it Covington, Virginia, I think, whatever state they were in, Jussie Smollett, a lot of these public things. People, you have the right to record people in public, because in public, generally, you don't have a right to privacy. You just have to make sure that that you do it right. You can go to Amazon, eBay, wherever. You can get these tiny little surveillance cameras. So if you meet in a restaurant, or if you meet in a coffee shop somewhere in public, you go there ahead of time. You can put one of these tiny little, not worth mentioning, little cameras somewhere, like in a plant, or up on a ledge somewhere. And then you have documented proof of this person being difficult or manipulative or lying. You catch them in the act, and then you have that. And as long as you do it legally, it is probably the most powerful form of evidence you can get. However, it comes with the highest level of legal liability. So you make sure you do it right. But it can be done legally. I mean, think about it. This is how a lot of these practical joke channels, the pranks that you see on YouTube, and Fail Army and all of these things, this is why it's legal, So just confirm with an attorney and you're good. So, and then you've got everything that you need. So what else do I have? Oh yeah, keep a journal too. Journal it in some way where it's got like a digital system where it's time stamped, or keep a notebook and write down the dates in the notebook, but have some sort of corresponding piece of physical evidence that actually proves that it happened on a date and that you didn't just sit down days later and write it. But keep a journal that adds some context to whatever documentation it is that you've collected, and keep it all together. This is the most annoying rule of engagement. This is the most difficult one to follow through with. That's why I kept it to the end. It is difficult to do, but I can promise you, I can absolutely promise you, it is there when you need it. And it's better to have gigabytes of documentation that you don't need than to not have 1 megabyte of documentation that you need and don't have. So it's got to be a habit. It's got to be a process. It sucks, but it's necessary to protect yourself, and it's necessary to prove damages. It's necessary. It's especially necessary to prevent gaslighting, to prove triangulation. And anytime somebody else gets involved, if they're putting words in somebody else's mouth, you want to be able to tell that person. And if they don't believe you, carefully consider whether or not they should hear the recording. In general, it's not really a card that you want to show while the hand is being played. Okay, most of the time, it's like poker. You don't want to flip your cards over and play. Not unless it goes all in and the stakes are really high, So don't reveal this hand unless it's absolutely necessary. But it is for sure valuable for keeping you sane and not letting them gaslight you. Because what happened several years ago is going to be fuzzy in your mind. And they will pull it up at the drop of a hat and refer back to something that happened 7 years ago with their own personal spin on it. And you say, no, that's absolutely not what happened. You can most assuredly say that anytime they go back in time. They're like plumbers. They love to bring up old shit. You can always be assured that anytime they go back in time, that's not what happened. And you can say, that's absolutely not what happened, and you know it. So don't even try. Don't even try that shit. And then you can go back later and look at what actually happened and discover that you're right. So thank you very much for watching this series. I hope it helps you. By all means, sound off in the comments or in the community section and let me know your thoughts. Thank you very much.